right, my dear BIBLEin365 brothers and sisters, I am incredibly excited. I say that all the time, but we are about to embark upon the book of 1 Kings. Now, I have said this before. We are going to go through 1 Kings, 2 Kings, 1 Chronicles, 2 Chronicles, and if it was up to me to rename the books, I would call it 1 Kings, 2 Kings. I would call 1 Chronicles 3 Kings and 2 Chronicles 4 Kings. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that, because we can talk about why it's sort of set up the way it is. 1 and 2 Samuel actually is covered in 1 Chronicles, and then 1 and 2 Kings are covered in 2 Chronicles, and it can kind of get a little confusing, but I'll walk you through that when we go through each of the books. Now, I do want to say that we don't know who the author of 1 Kings is, 1 and 2 Kings, although it is believed to be potentially Jeremiah. Now, there's a lot of good evidence for the fact that that might be the case. We just don't know, so I'm not going to speculate. However, there are some interesting references that are made in 1 Kings. Like, for example, you will hear a story maybe told about a specific king or a situation, and then it'll say, go to the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah. 1st and 2nd Chronicles are the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah. Then you'll hear, go to the Chronicles, the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel. And we don't have those books because we don't have a chronicling book of the northern kingdom of Israel. As a matter of fact, what we know of the northern kingdom of Israel is documented to us in the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah. And of course, we find out a lot in the book of 1 Kings. Now, how is that the case? Well, if you look at 1 Kings, you will recognize that it starts with Solomon actually being the king over all of Israel. Now, you might have heard me just a second ago refer to Chronicles, the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel and the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah. That's because after Solomon died, he had a son by the name of Rehoboam. Rehoboam was an unwise ruler, and because of his unwise tenure, the nation of Israel split into two different nations. The northern kingdom, which is 10 tribes to the north, referred to as Israel, and then the southern kingdom referred to as Judah. Of course, there was not a single godly king in the northern kingdom, not one. And of course, in the southern kingdom, after Rehoboam, there were several kings that were godly, which is why the southern kingdom lasted way longer than the northern kingdom. The northern kingdom fell to the hands of the Assyrians, and a couple hundred years later, the southern kingdom fell to the Babylonians. Now, all of this is significant, particularly in 1 Kings, because if you love the United States of America, you will be a good student of 1 Kings, and I will tell you why. Because 1 Kings is a stark reminder of what happens when a nation takes their eyes off of the true and living God. And you have to understand this very basic principle. When people take their eyes off God, they take their eyes off tyranny, or take their eyes off freedom, and they embrace tyranny. And the reality of it is, when you have an ungodly regime coming into office, like the Biden regime, they hate God, and so they hate freedom, and their tyrannical acts begin to manifest very quickly, whether it be through their purposeful inflation, to the kind of things that they're doing with our kids, to the exploitation of babies in the womb. This is the type of thing that was happening in 1 Kings when people took their eyes off the Lord. That division destroyed the nation of Israel, split them right in two. And I would take some time in 1 Kings to study what happened when Rehoboam met up with Jeroboam, which was the representative of the north, and the division took place. It was unbelievable. Lots of very unwise counsel was given to Rehoboam, and Rehoboam listened to that unwise counsel and ignored the wise counsel. And it was that sort of fresh new look on things, that revolution, if you know what I mean, that created the trouble that we saw for Israel. And I pray and hope that this will serve as a reminder to you of how important it is to love God first, that you might be able to do well for your nation. And that is the story of 1 Kings. It's amazing. You're going to love it. Keep a special eye out for that story. Keep an eye out for Solomon when he actually started to backslide by the relations that he started to have with other kings and collecting wives. A lot of great insight there, and a lot of stuff that will warn us and keep our eyes on Jesus as we seek him. So great job. You guys are doing great with your Bible reading. I'm so proud of you. Keep on fighting the good fight. We love you guys.